Thank God for grace today. Isn't it good to be in the grip of God's grace? Amen. Grace that strengthens and settles and establishes us. Thank you, Trio. That was very, very nice. I like new songs and new songs that are meaningful, and that was both. So thank you. I said to my wife this morning as I was dressing, tying my tie, I am thankful that today is Friday and tomorrow is Saturday and I'm not traveling anywhere. Can I get a witness? Amen. It's been a month this week, hasn't it? At least I think so. I think so. Take your Bibles, turn to Genesis chapter 25. This thing feels like it's right in my face, and I'm going to be cross-eyed if I keep looking at it, but we'll endure it. Genesis chapter 25. I hope you will access the scriptures, and I hope that you will track with me. I'm going to preach all the way through chapter 33 this morning. Everybody okay? And maybe this afternoon, maybe even into the night. Somebody said the clock on the back wall was a little slow. I said, I'm going by that clock this morning. And Brother Aaron Prophet said he hopes that it doesn't stop. Genesis chapter 25, verse 19. This is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah as wife. Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her. In other words, there was some sensations she was experiencing in her womb as she's carrying the children, and so she's concerned about that, and so she goes to the Lord in prayer, verse 22, and her prayer is, if all is well, why am I like this? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 people shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over. So they called his name Esau. Afterward his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Twin boys are born. The firstborn was delivered, and it was noted that he was red all over, like a hairy garment. One translation I read said like a fur cloak. That's pretty hairy. And so they named him Hairy, or the Hebrew equivalent, which was Esau. The name of the second-born was prompted by the unusual fact that as he was born, he was grasping or grabbing his brother's heel. And so they named him Heel Catcher, or Jacob, for in the Hebrew, that is what the name Jacob means. Heel catcher, deceiver, with apologies to my good friend Jacob Mason. It's going to be a rough morning for you, Jacob. Heel catcher, deceiver, schemer. These are synonyms for the name Jacob. Swindler, conniver, manipulator, Jacob. Now, Jacob was an increasingly self-centered individual. We're going to track his life this morning. We're going to watch how that works for him. We're going to see him get to a crisis moment, and then we're going to get a glimpse of what his life was like after he has that crisis moment in his life. As these boys grew, there was a noticeable difference between these twin boys. Esau, for example, was robust. He loved the outdoors. Hunting was his first love. Esau was a rugged outdoorsman. On the contrary, the Bible says Jacob was a plain man, which means he was gentle, more domesticated. He preferred to be close to home. Jacob's pleasure was in caring for the domestic animals around the family farm. Now, the contrasting character of these boys brought out contrasting likes and dislikes in their parents. Notice especially Genesis 25, verse 28, where it tells us that Isaac, the father, loved Esau because he ate of the venison that Esau would hunt and kill and prepare for him. But it says there also that Rebekah, the mother, loved Jacob. And as you might imagine, this tended to drive an emotional wedge between the two brothers and their parents. Esau attached to his father Jacob, and Jacob attached to his mother Rebekah. Now, Rebekah, the mom, had known before the twins' birth that the second-born, Jacob, would be, in fact, greater than the firstborn Esau. And perhaps, in her unwise favoritism, she had communicated this message to Jacob. And that surely would have pleased Jacob. I'm sure that he must have savored the thought that although he was the younger, Mom had told him that he will be greater than his older brother who will one day serve him. And yet, Jacob knew that being the firstborn would be, Esau being the firstborn, that he would be by rights the legal heir to the father's tribal position of authority. But he also knew that birthrights could be transferred by special arrangement to a younger brother. And so Jacob waited for an opportune moment of weakness in his brother in hopes that he could somehow manipulate and swindle out of his brother those blessings and those privileges of birthright blessing. Does that surprise you? That he's acting like this, that he's thinking this way? It really shouldn't, right? Because remember, his name is deceiver, schemer, conniver, manipulator, swindler, Jacob. Well, eventually opportunity came and Jacob seized the moment. Look at verse 29 through 34 of chapter 25. You remember the story. Jacob was a good cook. One day he had a stew simmering over the fire, and the Bible tells us it was lentils, some kind of a bean soup, kind of like beans. Lentils are kind of like beans. But Jacob has this stew that's simmering over the fire, and it smelled delectable, and it smelled so good, and maybe, it's kind of like, did your mom ever put a roast in the oven overnight? And, an American pot roast with beef and potatoes and carrots and onions and some good beef broth, maybe a little mushroom gravy. I don't know how you do it, but you know how that smells overnight? I mean, when you wake up at night, you smell those wonderful aromas wafting into your bedroom from the kitchen. You wake up in the morning and you just want to skip the bowl of Cheerios and get right to the beef stew. And that's kind of the idea here. And so Esau is out hunting, and Jacob is at home, and he's doing what Jacob does. Esau's doing what he does, and Jacob's doing what he does. And it happens that Esau comes in from the field, and he's been out for a little while, and he is very hungry. In fact, he was probably both hungry and a little bit angry. Maybe the hunt didn't go well, so he's hangry, right? You ever been hangry before? Esau maybe is hangry. And he comes in, and as he's coming into the camp or to where they live, Jacob sees him coming. Jacob knows he's been out for a while. Jacob knows that he's going to be hungry. And Jacob, being the guy that he is, maybe does a little wind test, and he notices that the wind is blowing out across the fire, across the simmering pot of stew, out to where Esau is coming in from. And so he waits till Esau is at the right moment, and he lifts the lid off of that pot of stew, and it just rolls out. This plume of steam rolls out, and it parts right on the nostrils of Esau as he's coming into the camp. And Esau staggers, and Jacob observes that. And Esau comes in and he says, "Man, I'm hungry. What's that you're cooking?" And Jacob doesn't say anything. He's just stirring the pot. Literally and proverbially, of course. And he's stirring the pot, and Esau says, I would give anything if I could have something to eat. I'm so hungry. Well, what is that? And again, we've made this an American pot roast. And so I can just see in my mind's eye that Jacob takes a wooden spoon and he carefully lifts out of the pot a succulent piece of roast beef. And he puts it, this is just some roast beef, and he fishes around a little, some potatoes, carrots, a little onion. And Esau said, I am so hungry, I would give anything if I could have a bowl of that stew right now. Is it ready to eat? Well, he says, it's ready. But he said, you would give anything? And he said, I would give anything. And Jacob says, well, we probably could work something out here. I mean, it seems that I have something that you want, and we both know that you have something that I want. And Esau says, what do I have that you want? And Jacob says, I want the birthright blessing. And Esau thinks about the birthright blessing, which he's going to get when his father gets older and maybe dies before he dies. And he thinks about how hungry he is. And guys, we can all identify with this, maybe the ladies too, but I know what, you say things like, I'm starving to death. And you think to yourself, if I don't get something to eat, Jacob probably thinks this, I'm not going to live long enough to get the birthright blessing. And so he says to his brother, gladly, I'll give it to you. I'm so hungry, I'm not going to make it till Father gives me the blessing. So I'll give you the birthright blessing for a bowl of stew. And Esau flippantly and carelessly hands over his birthright in exchange for some of Jacob's bean soup. And there's a sermon right there, isn't there, about Esau's carelessness and his haste, his weakness in the time of temptation. But our sermon is about Jacob today, right? I submit to you that were Jacob the kind of brother he should have been, he would have gladly shared his stew with his hungry brother Esau. He would not have craftily taken Esau's birthright in the moment of his weakness. No, he would have served his brother. But instead, Jacob cunningly takes away the birthright. Does that surprise you? Well, it shouldn't. I mean, remember his name? His name is deceiver, schemer, manipulator, swindler, heel catcher, Jacob. Now he has it. He has the coveted birthright. And so Jacob waits for time to pass, knowing that one day he's going to cash in. Chapter 27, in time, Isaac, the father, becomes old and feeble. His eyesight becomes dim. He no longer recognizes faces, a situation perhaps that Jacob took some cruel delight in. Why? Because he knows that circumstances are lining up for his favor. One day, his father Isaac is feeling like it is time to maybe set his house in order, and so he calls in Esau, thinking that Esau is to be the recipient of the patriarchal blessing. Notice, please, verse 2 of chapter 27 and following. He said to Esau, behold, now I am old, I do not know the day of my death. Now therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver, your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and make me savory meat such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. And Esau went to the field to hunt game and to bring it back for his father. But please notice the first phrase of verse 5, which says, now Rebekah, the mom, was listening when Isaac the father spoke to Esau the son. Rebekah heard, and she tells her favorite son, Jacob, and then she feeds his deceitful heart with a plan. She says to him, honey, I want you to go out to the flocks, and I want you to bring from there 2 baby goats. And I will make some savory food from them for your father, the way he loves it. And then you can take it into your father, and he can eat it, and then he can bless you before his death. Now, Jacob loves this idea. You know he does. But he has some very well-founded concerns, doesn't he? I mean, Jacob is concerned that while his father's eyesight may be poor, his sense of touch is still pretty keen. And he knows that maybe when he goes in carrying a bowl of stew, that his father's hand would touch his own hand, And he knows that there is some marked difference between his hands and the hands of his brother Esau. Because remember, from the time that Esau was just a kid, he has been a hairy creature. And time has not improved on that. Jacob, on the other hand, was a smooth-skinned man. I mean, it just appears that Esau got all the hair-growing genes, and Jacob is concerned that when he carries in this bowl of stew, his plan is going to be foiled. So he raises that concern to his mother, who assures him that she has thought of every detail and instructs him to, rather than discard the skins of the baby goats that you kill, save those. And when you come in, I will get the stew prepared for you, and I will take those goat skins and we'll place those around your hands and your arms and around your neck. And when Isaac feels those coarse, hairy goat skins, he will recognize, that's my boy Esau. Now, guys, I just got to tell you, that is really some kind of hairy. I mean, if you think about that, to touch goat skin and think that that's your son's hand is really significantly a hairy hand. But mom's thought of that detail. But Jacob has another concern. He's concerned that while his father's eyesight may be poor and they've got this sense of touch thing taken care of, he has also an awareness that maybe the sense of smell for the father is still fairly keen. And that his sense of smell, him smelling Jacob, or his not smelling Esau, I think is probably the way we should say this, would betray the plan. So mom says she's already thought of that detail as well. She said, I went into Esau's room and I found some of his clothing standing up in the corner over there, and I brought it, and when you go in, we're going to put Esau's clothing on you because it has that distinct Esau smell, whatever that was. Maybe deep woods off, I don't know. So you're going to wear his clothes, you're going to wear goat skins. And with the plan in place, Jacob goes out to the flock. He kills and dresses 2 baby goats, and he's careful to save the skin. He brings the meat into his mom. She throws in some venison bouillon cubes and quickly prepares it for Isaac. All this time, Esau is out in the woods in his tree stand hunting for deer. Well, when the goat stew is ready, Jacob puts on Esau's clothing. He places goat skins around his neck and on his forearms and his hands. He clears his throat for his best Esau imitation. And he picks up the stew and he goes in to see his father. Anybody here surprised by this whole scenario? No, we're not. You shouldn't be. Remember who this guy is? His name is, it literally means deceiver, manipulator, schemer, conniver, swindler, Jacob. Please notice the craft and deceit continues in verses 18 and following of chapter 27. So Jacob went into his father and he said, my father. And Isaac said, here I am. Who are you, my son? And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I've done just as you told me. Please arise and sit and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it you have found it so quickly? How did you get this deer so quickly? You just left. And he said, because here's the first deer hunting story of the Bible, and it doesn't surprise you that it's a lie. How did you get the deer? He said, because the Lord God brought it to me so quickly. So Isaac says to his son Jacob, whom he thinks or believes may be Esau, please come near me that I may feel you, my son, whether you're really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went over and he felt his hands, and he said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but those hands, hairy, hairy hands, those are clearly the hands of Esau. And he's touching goat skins. He didn't recognize him. And then he says, are you really my son Esau? He said, I am. He said, well, bring it near to me that I will eat of my son's game so that my soul may bless you. So he comes over to his father again, bringing the stew. And then his father says before he blesses him, come let me kiss you. And the whole idea is as he kisses, he's going to sniff him. Not only kiss him, but sniff him. because he wants to know, is this? And so as he comes over close, verse 27, he smells the smell of Esau's clothing, and he says, surely the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which the Lord has blessed. And so the father, Jacob, sits up, eats the goat stew, thinking it's venison. He blesses Jacob, thinking it's Esau, and Jacob has pulled it off. He has what he wanted. He gets the blessing. But you talk about a narrow escape. For verse 30 records that as soon as Isaac had concluded his blessing and Jacob left, that Esau came in all excited and he said, Father, here it is, venison stew. Sit up and eat so that you may bless me. And in that moment, Isaac, the father, realized that he had been tricked. And he said, who was the deceiver to whom I have already given the blessing? And Isaac feels betrayed. And Esau feels very angry. And he vows that as soon as his father dies, he will kill his brother in revenge. And so he waits. While he waits, the mother, Rebekah, learns of Esau's plan to kill her favorite son. And so she tells Jacob of the danger that he's in and encourages him to leave home. Go to your uncle Laban's, his place in Haran, and you stay there, and when Esau cools off, I will send for you and you can come back. And so the deceiver leaves home running for his life. Now, en route to Haran, in chapter 28, Jacob has this dream of the ladder that reached up to heaven. Remember that? We have a great hymn of the church written, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. Do you ever sing that? It just blesses your soul, doesn't it? In verses 13 and 14 and 15, God tells Jacob in this dream of the plan that he has for his life. Now, some of you are going to be thinking, well, that doesn't square. Jacob is a deceiver and he's a schemer and a manipulator. I will tell you, the vilest of sinners, God has a plan for their lives. And there's so much grace woven throughout this story. There really is, of God who's still trying to redeem this guy. So he tells Jacob of his plan. He says to him, your family is going to be as great in number as the dust of the earth. Your family will spread across the land. All of the earth will be blessed through your descendants, and there's a promise of protection. But I want you to notice, here's what I want you to look at. Look at verses 20 and 20 through 22, because in these verses we read how Jacob, the deceiver, tries to strike a deal with God. Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me, notice the if, and will keep me in this way that I am going, and will give me bread to eat, and will give me clothing to put on, and will protect me so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And of all that you give me, I will surely give 10% to you. Do you hear what he's saying? God, if you will do this and this and this and this and this for me, then I will give you the very privilege of being my very own personal God. Wow. But that doesn't really surprise us, because we know who he is. We know his name. His name is deceiver and swindler and conniver, Jacob. Now, in chapters 29 and 30, Jacob reaps a harvest from his seeds of deception when he thinks that he has married Rachel, and he wakes up in the morning with her sister Leah instead. There's some strange things happening there. Finally, with a little bargaining, he negotiates with Laban, the father-in-law, for Rachel as well. Now he's married, not to one, but two women, and Jacob in chapter 30 is working for his father-in-law Laban, tending to his flocks and his herds. And while he's there doing this, Jacob prospers. I think it's debatable as to whether his prospering is the result of A, God's blessing. I mean, he does claim that in a conversation with Laban later on, but then we also remember that in tricking his father for the birthright blessing some time ago, Jacob also claimed God's favor in helping him find the deer so quickly and kill it when actually he'd gone out to the barnyard and got 2 goats. In reality, I believe his prosperity while working for Laban is the result of Jacob's nature, his deceit, his craftiness. In fact, I believe the Bible teaches such. In chapter 30, Jacob and his father-in-law are having this dispute about work, and Laban seems to suspicion, I know it's shocking, but he seems to suspicion that Jacob is doing some things underhandedly, maybe stealing from him and taking advantage of him. And so after some discussion and negotiation, they agree upon a plan. The plan is, any of the flocks or herds that are born of a solid color will belong to the father-in-law Laban. Any flocks and herds, offspring that are born spotted or speckled, will be Jacob's. And while I don't pretend to understand exactly everything that I've read that's taking place here in chapter 30, verses 41 and 42, does seem to indicate that there is some attempted trickery in the skill of animal husbandry. I mean, Jacob seems to be arranging things in his favor. He would take these long sticks and peel the bark, and he would use them to build a strong herd for himself. Look at verses 41. Whenever the stronger, healthier livestock conceived, Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters. And when the flocks that were feeble were conceiving, he would remove those. And what happened is the stronger stock that was born would be spotted and speckled, and he got the stronger. And the weaker ones that were born would be a solid color, and they went to Laban's flock. And so it says in verse 43, thus the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks. And we're not surprised, are we? No, because we're starting to get a pretty good read on this guy, right? It's who he is. Continuing on in chapter 31, Jacob takes his family and his flocks and his herds, and he leaves his father-in-law. And true to his character, he leaves without informing Laban. I mean, no 2 weeks' notice, no chance for Laban to kiss his grandchildren goodbye. He just wakes up one morning to find that Jacob is gone. In chapter 32, Jacob is traveling back to his homeland. And he's preparing to meet his angry and embittered brother, Esau. And he's concerned because the last time he saw Esau had promised, I'm going to kill him. Now, it's not unlikely that your brother has said that to you, ladies. But Esau's going to deliver. I'm going to kill him. And Jacob is understandably worried. So in the early verses of chapter 32, Jacob sends some of his men ahead to meet Esau to find out what kind of a mood he is in. And when they return to Jacob after meeting with Esau, they come back and they say, Esau is coming to meet you. And he's bringing with him 400 armed men. And they're not singing, for he's a jolly good fellow. So Jacob grows fearful, and he formulates a plan for how he will meet his brother Esau. And I want you to notice how he does it. Let's read Genesis 32, 7 and 8. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and divided the people that were with him and the flocks and the herds and camels into two companies. Two groups. And he said, if Esau comes to the first group and attacks it, then the other group which is left will escape. And where do you think Jacob positions himself? You caught on to this guy, right? He is very secure in last place. Does that surprise you? No, this guy looks out for only one person, really. And it's him. He is the conniving, scheming, manipulating, swindling deceiver. Heel catcher, Jacob. In verses 9 through 12, Jacob prays to God. We don't read a lot about this guy praying, do we? But he does here because he's desperate. Listen to his prayer. Then Jacob said, now this is so sanctimonious. O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant, for I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, my only walking stick, and now I've become two companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him lest he come and attack me. Oh, and also the mothers of my children. But first in the prayer was him. When you read verses 13 through 21, you observe that Jacob continues to look out for himself. He kind of is scheming and manipulating and planning. He's plotting. He kind of changes throughout this whole process. Here in these verses, he divides his large party into several smaller groups. Before it was 2 groups. Now he's thinking, maybe that won't work. Let's try this plan. He divides them into smaller groups. All of his livestock with servants into smaller groups. And he tells the servants in the first group, when you come and you meet Esau, here's what you say to him. He's going to say to you, well, who are you and whose are these? And you say to him, we are your servants and we belong to your servant Jacob. And these are his, but he sends them as gifts to you. And it's not 2 groups now, it's many groups. And so the first group, he said, hopefully that will appease him. Maybe he won't kill all of them. And then the next group will show up, and then the next group will show up, and then the next group will show up, and the next group will show up. And he's hoping that by the time he shows up, Esau is just overwhelmed with everything, and he's softened a bit. Chapter 32 through 22 begins the climax of the story. Chapter 32 and verse 22 begins the climax. Jacob, on this occasion, is a desperate man. I mean, up until this point, he has been able to orchestrate and manipulate and deceive people until things have mostly gone his way. But the reality is, it hasn't worked well for him. I mean, has it? He has had to leave home. He's had to live as a refugee in Haran. His self-centeredness has left a wake of broken and dysfunctional relationships. He is estranged from his family, from his in-laws. He is a man without a country. He is a man who is desperately afraid that he's going to lose his life from his own flesh and blood, his brother. And because he has been calling the shots, he's not sure even where he stands with God. But he knows he really needs God. And I want to tell you the grace they sang about and the grace about which Miss V assured us to come to God for, that same grace will be available for anyone whenever, even if they've been like a Jacob. When you get to that place, if you get to that place, as sure as you are who you are, God's grace will be there for you. That's why it's undeserved. That's why it's unmerited. It's unearned. We don't. On the eve of meeting his brother, what may potentially really be the end of his life, Jacob has run out of tricks. He doesn't know what to do. He has nothing left to pull. And his back is against the wall, and he is fighting on the ropes, and he is a desperate man. Look at verse 24 of chapter 32. It says, Jacob was left alone. I need to say this to you. If you or I live self-centered lives, there will come a time, and it will be in a moment where we can't pull any more tricks out and we can't manipulate and move people around in our favor. There will come a time when I will be left alone. As a hospice chaplain for years, I've sat with those patients in their room. Their first wife wouldn't come. The second wife wouldn't come. None of the kids would come. None of the grandkids would come. Even the girlfriend wouldn't come. And sometimes I would go and sit in their room and chart visits, Jessica, just to be with them, because I don't think anybody ought to die alone. Jacob is left alone. And with him that night, he's wrestling in prayer, but literally he's wrestling with a man. Most believe it's the pre-incarnate Christ, and they wrestle in a physical but a spiritual battle all the way until the breaking of day.
And what they're wrestling with, what Jacob is really wanting to get from the struggle is, he's wanting God to promise him of protection. He's wanting God's blessings in his life. And they're wrestling. In fact, the battle is so fierce and they wrestle for so long that in the match, Jacob suffers a dislocated hip. And yet they still wrestle. And as they wrestle, there's this verbal exchange between God and Jacob. And it goes something like this. God says, let me go. Let's stop wrestling. The day's breaking. Morning is coming. And Jacob says, I'm not letting you go until you bless me. Well, just let me go. Just let me go. Now, I'm not going to let you go until you promise me protection for my brother. He's going to kill me tomorrow, God. No, you just let me go. No, I'm not letting you go. All right, tell me what your name is, God says. What is your name? Who are you? That's interesting, isn't it? Who are you? What's your name? And Jacob totally ignores that question because he knows who he is. He will not answer the question. Let me go. No, I'm not going to let you go. What's your name? I'm not going to answer that question. You just give me a blessing. See, he's always been able to get what he wants without giving what others need. But he can't. And thank God he can't. And church, I just want to tell you, thank God that God doesn't negotiate on our terms. He would, if he did, we would be left to ourselves, and it would be more of the same for Jacob. But he's wrestling. Let me go. No, I'm not going to let you go. Who are you? I'm not going to tell you. I just need you to bless me. And they wrestle all the way through. And finally, Jacob realizes, I have met my match. And in verses 27 and 28, you have this climax, this epic moment where God says to him, what is your name? And he says to him, my name is Deceiver. I'm a schemer. I'm a manipulator. I'm a swindler. I'm in self-control. My name is Jacob, and I need your blessing. And God said to him, because you've confessed who you are and you've surrendered to my lordship, I'm going to change who you are. Your name is no longer swindler or deceiver or schemer or manipulator. Your name's not Jacob. Your name is Israel, which means one who has prevailed with God, or a prince who has power with God. I thought about this verse several times this morning. Paul wrote this, I think, in Corinthians. He said, when I was a child, something like this, I thought as a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I acted like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. What's kind of wrapped up in that? Well, think about your younger siblings. Your younger siblings, you would say it's all about them. So they're spoiled, right? Daddy and mama coddle them and cater to them, give them what they want. I didn't get that. Well, I'm not so sure. I bet you did. Most of us, when we were younger, it was all about us, right? I mean, think about how little children act. It's all about them. Even my little granddaughter, as beautiful as she is, I will show you pictures gladly after service this morning. As beautiful as she wants what she wants. When she wants change, she cries. When she wants food, she cries. When she has gas on her stomach, she cries. And that won't improve for a few years. It'll only get worse, actually. But she'll still be the sweetest thing ever. And that's how we are. Until God's grace begins to work in our lives like it is and has in yours, and you transition from being children, we transition from being children to being adults. And hopefully we move out of those immature behaviors and responses of always choosing our own way or what pleases us or what satisfies us. But you know what? There's some people like Jacob that they struggle to get beyond that. One of the biggest challenges, we timed that so rest of you would wake up. One of the biggest challenges that you and I will have in our lives is choosing to live from the vantage point or from the perspective of being scheming, gratifying, and taking, or being like Jacob is after this moment. Jacob was marked by being a man after this moment of leaning, worshiping, and blessing. You say, how do you know that? Well, I see it very clearly in the very next chapter, chapter 33. Because after this wrestling match, when Jacob's life is changed, here's what I read in verse 3. Jacob gets up in the morning, he sends his children and all of his possessions over the ford, the river. But look at verse 3. He himself went on before them. What a difference. He comes to his brother. You can read the balance of verse 33. He says, verse 11, God has dealt graciously with me because I have enough. I have everything that I need. He's given his brother most of everything, and yet he's saying, you know why he's saying he has enough? Because when you have God, you have enough. And that's the tension of the self-life versus the surrendered, spirit-controlled life, spirit-led life. Jacob lived a different life. In fact, the very last reference to this man, Jacob, is not in Genesis, not in the Old Testament, but it's in the New Testament, in Hebrews 11, the Saints' Hall of Fame, where we read these words. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, look at what it says. He blessed each of the sons of Joseph, and he worshiped, those would be his grandchildren, he blessed his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he worshiped God, but he did so leaning on the top of his staff. And you say, well, of course, he's dying, he's an old man, so he's probably got a cane. No, I can't prove it, but you can't disprove it, so indulge me. I think when he's wrestling with God at the Fort Jabbok, and he suffers a dislocated hip, I think from then on, Jacob walked with a limp, and he walked leaning on a cane for the rest of his life. And what I came here to tell you this morning is this. In every life, there is a choice to be made between a self-made life or a self-surrendered life. And the pronounced difference in both is always seen in the outcomes. Each of us live our lives from one of two perspectives. Either scheming and gratifying and taking, or leaning and worshiping and blessing. And today's Bible lesson shows us the folly of the former, but all the fullness of the latter. And I encourage each of us to live lives that are surrendered to the lordship of Jesus Christ. As I preach to you today, one of three, you're probably in one of three places, one of four places maybe. Maybe you've never heard this before. Maybe this is a brand new thought for you. Maybe some in the academy, you've never really thought about it in these terms, and the Spirit of God's been faithful to you. I would encourage you to seek Him and reach for Him. Let Him do in your life what He wants to do. It will be a beautiful thing. Some of you maybe have known about this surrender that needs to happen, but you have yet to do it. I'm not going to invite you forward this morning. You're welcome to come, but I would encourage you this weekend, and some of your downtime, seek God and surrender to His control of your life. Others of us maybe have had that moment where we've had that wrestling match with God, but we have wrested control back. And if we are honest, we realize that we are really sharing control, which is really taking control from God. When we grieve the Spirit of God and when we quench the Spirit of God, we then become the one in control of our lives. If that's you, and God has talked to you, let him have control of your life. And maybe there are others of us today. I pray that this is the majority of us. That we are living with a life that is surrendered to him. And every moment of every day, we're walking in the Spirit. And we're letting him guide us and lead us. Today, we have seen Jacob when he was Jacob. We saw him in the crisis moment. And then we saw him in the blessed life as Israel, a man who has power with God. Let us pray.
We're glad you joined us. God's Bible School and College prepares students for lives of ministry wherever God calls them. This content is possible because of the generous support of friends like you. To support GBSC, visit giving.gbs.edu. Thank you.